Hello and welcome to Magnetic Rise. This is a podcast created by Strategnetic where we dive into the real stories behind the B2B founders and experts who are scaling innovative companies with clarity and conviction. I am your host, Cikizwa Vilakazi, and today I am joined by Jimi Gibson, who is the Vice President of Brand Communication at Thrive Agency, as well as a Forbes Agency Council member. So over the last 25 years, Jimmy has worked with powerhouse brands and ambitious startups, helping them grow with a mix of sharp strategy, compelling storytelling, and a bit of unexpected magic. Quite literally. So, without further ado, Jimmy, welcome to Magnetic Rise. We are excited to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation. I know we talked in the green room and excited to get to know you better and maybe share some tips with your audience.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely excited to hear what you have to say. So let's start with a bit of your background, right? So you've gone from performing on stage as a magician to sort of guiding brands through CRO and digital transformation. Can you walk us through the journey in a little bit more detail?
Sure. I think I was digging through some boxes a couple of years ago and I found a membership card to Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club when I was 4 years old. So I just sort of got hooked. And as I got older, I would say this was probably middle school, maybe. I went to the local print shop and got some business cards printed up. They kind of looked at me funny when I walked in the door because I had designed the business card and they were like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then in high school, I actually started working for an advertising agency. They were called ad agencies back then. They've morphed into other types of agencies now. And I started doing promotional shows for a pretty large international company. And I thought, wow, this magic thing is sort of like marketing. If I had to pick a career to go into, it would be something related to marketing. And so I decided to go to school and started working in ad agencies out of school, but was always had this dual profession where I was doing magic and I was doing marketing and then actually started to combine them. And yeah, I think it's fed a lot of my perspective and lens that I see the marketing world through. And maybe we'll jump into a little bit more of that as we go on with the show.
Yeah, I think let's jump into it right now. It
Okay.
is quite interesting. What lessons from being a magician translate directly into your like any marketing strategies?
Yeah. I'm going to give you the silly answer and tell you absolutely everything. Uh, so magic is sort of the original conversion optimization approach. The whole goal that a magician has when they walk on stage is to guide attention, to control perception, and deliver some sort of payoff that people either didn't see coming or were really hoping would get delivered, right? Um, and through that process, it should all feel very satisfying. And so if you think about seeing a magician on stage doing a trick or doing a card trick in front of you, when the final part of the trick is revealed, you're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's the way we should approach our marketing. I think we've sort of lost sight of that amazement and wonder. And that could be with your product or service. It could be with the way you handle your customer service. And so I would say, a magician is choreographing every moment and
Mm.
minimizing that friction, right? So you don't want them to get confused. You want to maximize that surprise and delight. And then you really want to get rid of all the dead ends, making sure the next step is obvious, whether it's a magic trick or a marketing conversation. If you're not guiding them to the next step or asking them to do something else, you've sort of lost them. So we talk about the customer journey, the buyer journey, and then sparking curiosity, I think, is something that we always um, are involved in when we see a magic trick. Like, is it really going to happen? What's going to happen if it doesn't
Yeah.
work? And we've sort of lost that in our marketing conversations. So I would say there's uh, a lot of parallels that I talk with about our clients, and they start to realize, yeah, maybe I've lost that spark, and we need to get back to that.
Yeah, I think definitely I agree with you because I think marketing has sort of become what people look for as a sort of glove that they can just put onto their business and they get an all-in-one solution done without ever having to tend to it again or sort of apply themselves to it. And I think it's great having an approach like yours because then it helps to keep creativity alive, innovation alive, because you're always looking for the next wonder, right?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had a lot of things with AI and all sorts of things where people think if I just put this in to ChatGPT or whatever and I get a strategy back, I'll apply that and I'll be done.
Right. And we
Yeah.
always say, can you wave your magic wand or push the magic button? So we already have that sort of metaphor in our language, but it doesn't always work that way when you take your creativity and yourself out of the process.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I've seen somewhere that you mentioned performance is part of branding. What do you mean by that statement?
Yeah. So I would say people don't buy from you, they buy into you. And so performance isn't about acting, isn't about showing up with some flashy, sequined outfit on. Um, Really, it's how you show up and how you bring yourself into that interaction. And you think about branding, it could be personal brand for the founder, and a lot of people say, well, that's self-serving.
Mm,
No. You talk about branding for a company. What is your personality? You have all sorts of different types of performers, whether they're a magician, a comedian, a singer, a person, an actor in a movie. And when you look at that character, you can understand the predictability of how that character is going to react in a situation. The same holds true for a business. I know our focus here is B2B. And so the more you can infuse that personality and that expectation and your point of view of the world, the more you're going to attract the people who are going to be excited to do business with
mm,
you. And yeah, there is a performance aspect to it. If you think about a website, it's kind of like a stage. There are things that are happening behind the scenes with all the technical aspects. And then there's things that you purposefully decide, what are you going to put on that page? Are you going to put a video? Are you going to put a bullet point? Are you going to put big, long paragraphs? And the impression that you're giving off by that performance on stage or through a product demonstration or a Zoom conversation are all part of that brand, whether it's the personal brand of the person on the other end of the screen or the other end of that conversation or the company that you're representing.
So you've touched on something that I want us to sort of speak about, which is personal branding aligning with your company's branding, right? Um, for the founders who sort of hate being in the spotlight, what is your argument as to why they need to show up as a personal brand as well?
Right. Well, you mentioned in the intro that I'm part of the Forbes Agency Council. I just had an article come out this week on this very topic. So you can just search Jimi Gibson and Forbes. And what we're seeing is people buy from people. They don't buy from logos. They don't buy from nondescript companies. And so the more the founder can show up, and there's a variety of ways for that founder to show up, I would say two things: get over it and figure out a way that makes you comfortable. And so we talked earlier about, your professional journey, and you were behind the camera and now you're in front of the camera. And so you just said, I'm going to do this. There's lots of ways for a founder who does not want to be an influencer, does not want to be show up. Just think about personally, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about a nonprofit? Are you passionate about your kids' soccer team? Are you passionate about some charity that you could be involved with? Show up. Um, be the face of the company related to how your organization contributes to something that you're passionate about. The other thing that you could do is you probably have customers, if you've been in business for a while, that are your friends because you enjoy helping them. If you truly believe that your product or service is needed by your end user, or if you're in a distributor, the distributor can provide for their families or whatever the case may be, then it's your responsibility to make sure that you are part of that. Everybody wants to know the owner. Everybody wants to rub elbows with the founder. That's a responsibility that you should enjoy. And I mentioned before, if you are in business for a while, you probably have friends that are your customers. Just film a chat that you have with them. Why did they start working with you? A customer testimonial or a customer interview uh, can also share a lot about your personality and the questions that you ask, how they respond to the relationship. We can all see the dynamics and the rapport that you would have with one of those people that you've been working with for quite a while. So I would say there's not one blanket answer for how you can show up and get involved. But what's going to make it fun, and what's
Mm.
going to be something that you would enjoy doing? That's probably a clue to how you should show up. So maybe
Yeah.
some of those things that I mentioned would be appropriate as people begin to think about showing up.
Yeah, I like that suggestion that you have about those effortless conversations and testimonials, because I think they would be a great way to build trust without actually turning yourself into a sort of brand influencer. Do you have any other ways that you would suggest for someone to build that trust without sounding like I'm selling my company because my life depends on it or something?
Yeah. So one of the things that I see with founders a lot of times, they are comfortable talking about themselves and they revert back to, here's what I did, here's my history, here's how I started the company. The reality is nobody really cares until they know if the business can solve their problem. And so it actually gives you a license and a comfort level to know that you don't have to look in the mirror and talk about yourself all the time. What's the most amazing thing that people want to hear? They want to hear their name. And so if you can talk about other people, if you can talk about, I mean, this goes way back to how to win friends and influence people. Um, Talk about other people, talk about their wins. And I often use the 5 finger technique. And this is an easy way that you can carry this around with you. It relates to the fact that a magician uses their hands to perform magic. And so, for those of you who are watching the video, I'm just holding up my hand and we'll start at the pinky. And so, you probably remember that pinky promise that you had when you were a kid, right? And so, you locked pinkies with somebody, and that was a little swear promise. So, what are you promising your ideal customer that you're going to deliver for them? That would be a number of topics that you could
Mm.
talk about. The next one, in the United States, our ring finger is the where you wear your wedding band. And so when you think about a wedding band, that's also a promise, but it also probably started out with a passionate relationship. What are you passionate about, and what is your audience passionate about? What do they desire out of their life, what their business, whatever, product or service you're involved with? Now, don't get scared. I'm not going to pull my fingers down, but I'm going to the middle finger. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, what's the middle finger about? The middle finger is actually about defiance. And who is the villain of your brand, right? And
Mhm.
so why is your brand need to conquer that villain? It may be a person, it may be a company, it may be an ideology. And so I often use the example of like a fad diet. If you are about a healthy lifestyle and your product or service has to do with that, a fad diet could be your villain. And so you need to speak out against that villain, right? Any story that you read about, and story structure is a big thing as part of brand storytelling. There's always the bad person, right? And so the hero is up against that bad person. The next one is the pointy finger, and the pointy finger can indicate a direction, right? And so we're going to go that way. And so you should be able to talk about the direction of the company. It also is the symbol for number one. And so we always say that a conversation should be about one person, one product or service, one offer, and one call to action, right? And so the singularity of focus helps to not confuse the people that you're trying to talk to. There's another Forbes article I wrote about this whole 5 finger approach. The last one is the thumb, and the thumb is a couple of different things. It's your thumbprint. What is the thumbprint you're going to leave behind? What is the personal mark that you're going to leave on this industry? And then it's also about a thumbs up. And that means success. We're doing well. How can you celebrate your successes? How did you help a customer get to where they wanted to be? Who on your team has done a great job. Can you focus on that? Can you champion them in some post or video or whatever the case may be? And then how are you looking at your metrics and how are you looking
Mm.
at your results that you can be proud of? Or perhaps needs areas of improvement. And so this is just a quick little reminder. If you just go through these 5 fingers, you've got a wealth of things that you could talk about. And it's kind of a cool thing to be able to remember that and to fall back on that if you're sort of stuck.
Yeah, I love that. It actually makes the approach to these conversations seem a lot less daunting than what we make it out to be in our heads. Speaking about metrics, what is a conversion rate myth that you would love to make vanish, like for good? And what should people focus on instead?
More traffic equals more sales.
Okay.
Um, a lot of times, if you talk about the three-legged stool of how your business can grow, and there's a million different versions of this, but in digital marketing, you look at traffic to your site, you look at conversion rate, and then you look at average order value or the value of that transaction. And so if you can impact one or more of these, you have a magic formula to be able to affect your revenue. But if we look at traffic to the site, it has to be qualified traffic to the site
Mm,
because you can just show up in a theater to perform a magic show, but if it's the wrong audience, your particular type of magic is not going to get any better. It's not going to be great. It's going to fall flat, right? And so
mm,
you have to think about what type of audience are you attracting to your business. And I use the word website, but it could be showroom, it could be retail environment, it could be whatever you want to do. And so I would say it's not always about driving more traffic because you can increase revenue with the same amount of traffic, just a higher conversion rate. And so a conversion rate can be affected by a million different things, right? Too many calls to action are confusing. There's frustration clicks on the website that people are trying to click something and it's not a button, but you think it's a button, improper language on the site. So all sorts of tools and analysis that you can do on that conversion. And then the other one is the average order value or the value of the transaction. And so what are you driving them towards? Are you driving them towards your lowest price product because you know if they're going to buy that product, that's a low friction way to get them in as a customer. And you know over the course of 12 to 18 months, they're going to then convert into a total customer value of X? Or are you going for the big win right away and you have a very high average order value or value of your service? And so all of these decisions typically revolve around those 3 metrics. And we always get the request, drive more traffic to the site. I know that's going to make things better. Yeah, we can do that, but that would not be responsible
mm.
because that is not a blanket statement that you can follow.
Yeah, okay. So where do you usually start when trying to improve a client's conversions?
Well, there are technical things that we want to look at to make sure there's no friction. One of the things that I talk about is, in relation obviously to magic, is looking for those invisible, um, oh, things that you don't notice, the invisible friction. So
Okay.
if I'm trying to make a coin appear or do something with my hands, we used the 5 finger analogy before, there's all sorts of hand mechanics and muscle memory that has to go into that, right? And
Mm,
so I could literally spend hours, days, weeks, months making fine adjustments in my position to make sure the person doesn't see what they shouldn't see, or to make sure that that coin pops up at just the right moment that looks great on stage. The same thing happens. We often are blind and we make these general categorizations of this is what a website should look like, but often the order in which the menu at the top. So obviously the home page, the second most visited page is often the About Us page because people want to know what the company is about. When you get into product pages, how do they stack on the page? Is it above the fold? What is the visual language? What are you actually saying on the page? And so once we start to point these things out, we like to educate our clients. And then they start to realize, wow, I need to look at this at a deeper level. I need to look at it at face value. I need to look at it as if I was a customer who was landing on this page, right? Or coming into the showroom or having the conversation with the sales rep. And start to break that down into the touch points or the micro stages of that process. And you could lose somebody at any point along the way.
Mm.
And it really is humbling. Sometimes we like to use data, whether it's click tracking or heat maps. If it's that type of situation, you can have mystery shoppers if it's more of a personal interaction that can talk about how they were treated in a sales process. So I would say just sort of laying everything out on the table and then looking at where in the past we have seen friction occur and then zooming in on these little micro portions to understand, um, can it be a quick fix or are we going to have to get into something a little more uh, detailed and time consuming? So everything is different, and that's sort of the exciting part of being part of improving somebody's conversions. But when you look at the conversion rate and then depending on that company and how much their service is worth and or product and the traffic that they're getting or their sales leads, it can be significant to increase their conversion rate or sales rate.
Yeah, that is so interesting to for you to break it down like that in the way that you approach it, because it's sort of like what would I call it? Like a sleight of hand mindset, but it also helps you like visualize the process that you have to go through to actually unpack everything and fix it, which, for lack of a better description, is really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
was part of a group that went to Montreal for some training on my magic performance. And there's a guy, Bob Fitch, who is also a magician, but he was in the original cast of Annie on Broadway. He's directed 22 Broadway productions. And so we were responsible for bringing 2.5 minutes of our performance to this workshop.
Mm.
It was a week long workshop. There was about 8 of us there. And one night or during the day, you presented your 2.5 minutes and he critiqued it for 2.5 hours.
Yo.
Every moment, every nuance, everything that you said, every hand position. And so I thought about that in the way that we should treat the moneymaker of a business, which is
Mm.
often the website or your sales team or the language that you use in a brochure. All of those things, you should be excited about tearing them apart, making them the best that they can possibly be, and always striving for better improvement. I mean, that
Yeah.
separates mastery from just, it's okay, it's good enough, right?
Yeah. That is quite amazing, actually. Jimmy, thank you so much for bringing your energy, your story, your sharp insights into this conversation. I've absolutely loved it. I think you've shown us that building a brand, it isn't just about like pixels and pages. It's also about performance, about presence, about purpose. So, yeah, with that said, for anyone who wants to turn their message into something magnetic, something magical, where can they reach you?
Yeah. So Thrive Agency is just like it sounds, thriveagency.com. We're pretty large. I would say we're larger than about 95% of agencies out there, but our passion is helping that small business owner. So don't be scared that we're too big. And then I post a video every single day, Monday through Friday on LinkedIn. I made a commitment to do that at the beginning of the year. I should have done the math. That was 261 videos, but hey, I'm still in there. So happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. You can DM me. Happy to chat, give you a second opinion about something. Yeah, I just love the topic.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I think it also gives us a bit of surety that you are confident in your approaches. So, yeah, thanks for that, Jimmy. With all of that being said, that will be it for today's episode of Magnetic Rise. Until next time, keep rising and remember, real conversations start with real connections.